Welcome back to This Was Supposed to Be Easy, your go-to podcast for connection, joy, and a good dose of laughter.
Hosted by two friends who've seen enough of life to know that it's never as simple as it sounds.
Or looks.
Each conversation celebrates the diverse journeys we travel, the moments of bravery, the strength we didn't know we had, and the joy we find along the way.
Because let's be honest, life is full of things that were supposed to be easy, but turned out to be harder.
And definitely funnier
than we thought. This is Amy.
And this is Cheryl. And if it were easy, we wouldn't be here.
Hi, everyone. We're so glad you're here. Before we jump into today's episode, we wanted to take a moment to introduce this conversation because it moves us a little further into what we sometimes lovingly call the woo-woo. Our guest, Michelle Burkhard, is an expert in leadership, coaching, education, and organizational change. But today, we are exploring another part of Michelle's life and her work, her experiences communicating and interacting with angels, the role of intuition and inner knowing, and how she has continued to develop her spiritual connection with the world around her. We recognize that this topic may feel exciting and familiar to some listeners, while it may be newer or a little further outside the comfort zone of others. We certainly do not enter this conversation as experts. We enter it as curious people who had the opportunity to ask honest questions and learn more about someone who we know and respect. So much of this podcast is about exploring the things we thought were supposed to be easy and discovering how much more there is to understand. For us, part of that means and remains open to the experiences and perspectives of the people around us, even when those experiences may be different from our own. We hope you will join us in leading with curiosity, listening with an open mind, and become excited about what we might learn over the course of the next hour. Let's jump into our conversation with Dr. Michelle Burkhard.
Hello, everybody. Today, Amy and I are super excited to have another guest with us. We have invited Dr. Michelle Burkhard to join us today to share a conversation that sometimes Amy and I call it taking a step into the woo-woo, which I think is a really fun way to begin this introduction because I did say doctor. Michelle is a doctor. She really has a lot of her background and passion is in education, in early childhood education, and then moving into leadership and coaching. And so if you go to Michelle's business website, she is the founder of Grow by One. And there might even be more to that name. I'll let Michelle fill in the blanks, once she starts talking. But I've known Michelle for many years, and I've watched her grow this business and grow her knowledge and her expertise in coaching. And both Amy and I have been able to interact with her many, many times in a lot of those professional roles. And so Amy and I got together and we're like, hey, let's have a chat with Michelle, but let's stretch ourselves and also you all, our audience, and jump a little further into a topic we haven't really touched on yet. And so Michelle is going to help us have a conversation about the work that she does with angels. And I think I'm just going to stop and leave it there and just say, welcome, Michelle. Fill in the blanks a little bit with all of that rambling I just did.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And when you asked to come on, I was like, absolutely, I'd love to help. And then you said, this topic, I was like, because I would say 90% of my job, my role, my service to humanity is really in the logical space. I have a PhD in assessment, evaluation, and accountability, which sounds boring. To me, it's not. Taking individuals, groups, and systems through change, I absolutely love that. So you want to geek out on anything nerdy and research related, I'm all for you. I do take a hard stop at spreadsheets, though. That's where my nerd goes to die. So
we can call my daughter for that. She loves spreadsheets and they're color coded, and they even include like all of her creative side, like every Broadway show and what theater and who was in it. And it's incredible. But, I can't even do Excel spreadsheets. I go to Google Sheets and that's as far as I can do it.
I do my best, but there are limits. So, and then this weird kind of other side of me started showing up about 8 years ago. I say it's the spiritual woo-woo side. It includes a lot of different things. I do not know why I was gifted these things. I do say gifted because I truly feel like it's an extra and that I can be generous with this gift that I've been given. But I didn't see it that way when it first started. So I was smack dab in the middle of, building a business. I was doing 250 live events, keynote speaking a year, and, doing pretty well, having a lot of success. And then I was having some challenges in my personal life, really trying to figure out some things, and it was affecting everything. And it was like the universe showed up and said, we're going to take you to the next level. I like how you use the word stretch. I felt a little bit more like the mom on Incredibles movie, like really, really stretched. And it just kind of happened naturally, organically, and freaked me out. I never once asked for an experience with the spiritual world. It wasn't something I sought after. I didn't go see a teacher, nothing. People always ask me, like, who taught you all this stuff? I'm like, dude, I would have loved a teacher. It's kind of like my world went from being this very structured, here's what you learn, right? I have 4 higher degrees. So there's always somebody saying, you learn this, and then you learn this, and then you learn this, right? Lots of structure, lots of organization to this, like, oh my God, what is happening space. So I'll tell you, one day I was just kind of sitting here. I have a study chair that I absolutely love, just thing. And all of a sudden I look up and clear as day, the whole entire room is filled with what I know now was angels. But at the time I was like, what is happening? What is going on? I've never experienced this. Some of them I could see with my eyes. Some of them I just knew that were kind of there. Some of them, ironically, I could see with my ears. That's a whole thing. And so it scared me. And I knew at the time a couple folks that were more in the spiritual realm. And so I said, hey, got some questions. And they were really great mentoring me, helping me through all of these very spontaneous gifts throughout the years. And the angels have just showed up in a great and mighty way. Now it's just a normal everyday. They're right here in the room with me today. It's just a thing I do, kind of like breathing. And I do use them a lot for my business as far as understanding things, a lot of discernment. I actually use them to fix my printer all the time because
Ooh.
we all have a love and hate relationship with our printer, right? The angel process is really helpful for that one. But it also really helps me to stay in touch with my intuition so that I can be a better mom, a better friend, and definitely a better coach.
Well, you know what? That's a great point where you just said like how you use that to expand on your intuition. How do you do that?
So intuition is, I always tell people it's kind of like a muscle. You got to go to the gym. And if you're not paying attention, you got to still go back to the gym and you got to put the time and effort in. Intuition, when you're first developing it, I feel like the universe will ask you to do stupid stuff to see if you really trust. I'll give you an example. One day I was at a restaurant. I was on the road going from event to event. I stopped at an Applebee's because, that's where all the spiritual stuff happens. And I'm having lunch and I look over at these 2 ladies. They're older ladies, seem to have a good relationship. And I distinctly hear, go tell that lady her shoes are ugly. And I was like, I will not. I absolutely will not do that. No. And so I'm like finishing up, I'm paying my bill, I'm having this internal conversation, fight really. And so I go to the restroom and I hear, do you trust or do you not? And I was like, okay, all right. So I went over and I said, hello, ladies, how are you? In my mind, I'm going, how the heck do you have this conversation? And I said, well, my name is Michelle. You don't know me. I don't know you. And I'm really sorry, but I had an angel just show up at lunch. This is normal for me. But the message that I have for you, and I looked at the one lady and I said, your shoes are ugly. The fear in me, I tell you.
I'm dying.
Oh my gosh. And so apparently they are sisters. They were out shopping. One of the sisters is very religious. The other's not. And they were out shopping. This one lady had bought the shoes and she jokingly was like, okay, do I want to keep them? Do I not? And she said, all right, well, if God is real, then he'll send somebody to tell me my shoes are ugly. And I was like, Oh, and there it is. Now, for me, because this happens all the time, I was just like ready to go back to my car and get on the road. They're like, "Please come sit down," And so we had
Mhm.
a great conversation, and they just laughed and laughed and laughed. And what do you do with that? You know?
I mean, I'm listening to you talk and I'm thinking about the many times I've been in the room when you're speaking, and maybe you can help me remember what you often have on your shirt, but it's about loving on others, I think. And so I'm imagining the conundrum you were having with, how can I love on others and go tell this stranger her shoes are ugly? Because, obviously my very literal brain went to, you're talking about the shoes she's wearing. This is a mean thing to say.
Yeah.
And so that, do you trust or not question? Whoa.
Yeah, so my three values that I do in life and also in business: safe space, service, and love.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't scream safe space, does it?
No.
But knowing the full story, it definitely screams service and love.
Yeah.
Now, she had made that request at the store as she was checking out. She wasn't anywhere near to that time, that place. So she put in the request, and the universe showed up and said, "I'm going to give you exactly what you need." But it meant that I needed to take that leap of faith and do something that I wasn't comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And I apply that all the time, not just to those situations, but when I'm having a conversation with one of my kids, right? How can I stay present and then, listen and ask the right question? Not the right question that I would ask as their mom, but the right question that they need as a person right now in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Or how do I do that in my business? I'm a big picture visionary thinker. And so I'm constantly looking at the whole entire board or the field and like, okay, how can I create something that's the best and highest for everyone? But I don't see everything. And so I need to, show up every day and say, this is what's on my plan. And then, a lot of my folks that follow me, they're like, oh, this is what we're doing now. That's what we say. This is what we're doing now. Life showed up. This is what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to listen, that's the intuition part. And everybody connects with their intuition differently. It's not the same. So I might see angels and get messages. Someone else might go for a long ride on a country road. Or another friend of mine swims, or another friend is a dancer. And so usually the things where you're moving your body and you're getting out of your thinking brain, that's when your intuition likes to come and talk to you.
I've often felt and maybe even said, like, that's when I get creative, right? If I'm out for a walk, if I have stepped away, or if I let myself play with clay or go work in the flower garden or whatever it is, that's when I feel like I'm getting creative, and maybe I'm using a different word for a very similar
Yeah.
experience. I was taking a peek at your website this morning, and one of the things I've noticed is that, well, actually, one of the things I noticed that I probably should have put in your introduction was that you are the author of 2 books at the moment. There's probably another one in the works. I actually, Amy likes to laugh because everything I want to put my hands on is within reach. So, if you're seeing the video of me, you see these colorful books behind me and whatever, but the actual rest of the space, I would hesitate to put on camera. But I literally could grab this without having to get up from my chair. This is one of your books, your most recent book, 50 Questions to Be a More Impactful Coach. So I probably better share that with everyone because I aspire. Amy, I also believe aspires. We aspire to be authors. I mean, I am an author when it comes to articles and, all of the academic pieces, but I really do aspire to write. And so want to acknowledge that and recognize that. So I was checking your website to make sure it wasn't more than the 2 books I was aware of and the deck of coaching question cards. And I noticed that you have a button for your podcast, which I'd love for you. It seems like you've even talked about the angels recently on your podcast, but there was a button for your books. There was a button for different courses that you offer, and also a button for intuitive readings.
Yes.
And I was like, intuitive readings, that sounds interesting. And I could sort of put that on pause, and I went to the courses, because there were a lot of things I was expecting. Or I've participated in your coaching academy.
Yep.
Um, I know that you're very active in leadership and working with leaders and trainings and workshops with leaders. But then there were some others that had to do with working with archangels, I believe it said. And I think the feminine divine or
Fine.
divine.
Feminine energy. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Okay, I was close. And so maybe if you could just help fill in some of those blanks with, this moment when you started seeing angels and finding some mentors, probably learning from the angels to, really stretching and, adding some of this to this other very logical work that you do.
Yeah, so the books, let me start there. Yeah, so we have the two books on our website right now. We do have another one on Amazon. I have been writing poems for a few years now. Very intuitive process for me. So there is one book on Amazon of poems. There is another one that's coming out hopefully by the end of the summer. So I'm very excited about that. The 50 Questions book is literally, as you were talking about it, I made the connection in my head. That's based on intuition. And the reason being is that that book is for probably 15 years. I've been traveling, internationally, but to many different state conferences and things like that, talking to leaders and coaches, doing a lot of different research, wanting to know what are the holes in our coaching models and programs, and then what can we do to help fill it. So that's where the Coaching Academy came in. But the book is literally the top 50 questions that professional coaches who are doing this on a daily basis ask. Okay, I've been in the field 20 years, but I'm struggling with this. Well, I know why you're struggling with it because we don't have something like that for you, right? So the Coaching Academy is the answer to a lot of the questions. Here's the place that you can get your questions answered. But the book is literally them asking the question and me, from my experience and my intuition, answering those questions. So even though it's a logical reproduction of my intuition, like it's very hard to show, it all blends together.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of folks get weirded out by me sometimes, when I talk about business, they're like, but Michelle, you need to niche down. And I'm like, but do I? Michelle, you need to, pick one thing. You can't talk about angels and coaching. I'm like, but can't you? Right. And so it's very hard for me to choose one side or the other. I like to explain to people, if you're coming in on the leadership side, the logical side, at some point I'm going to say, yay, you've gotten resourced. Can we talk about your bitterness and need for forgiveness? Because that might be limiting you. For other folks, they're coming in the woo-woo door. They're like, I need some help and I need some support. I don't know where else to get that. Excellent. So maybe you have your idea of healing has occurred. Great. Well, then I'm going to say, okay, but how can you go out and serve others? So here are some tools, right? And so for me, it's like you've got to have them all. You can't just have one. And it's just who I am. And so the books, whether it's coaching or poems, that's Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
So also, I'm really excited. We do have a couple other books in process. One, I am presenting at the National AEYC conference in December with a colleague of mine. We are doing trauma-informed coaching. So not like we're coaching your trauma. We are coaching people that we know have trauma. We're not fixing their trauma. We are coaching them in an ethical way that might have trauma. So again, both sides coming together. And then I have officially done all of my research and I am ready to launch a developmental theory of coaching, which is really 5 levels of coaching, to show people this is how a coach develops over time. It's not this way, it's not that way, it's not this model. And it's a very inclusive, like all of the coaching programs and models can find themselves in that framework. We're all one. Let's stop competing and start collaborating a little bit more. And so again, is that logical? Is that woo-woo? It's all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very practical. And yeah, so intuitive reading, this is something that I do. I have some clients that's just kind of what they pay for. Instead of doing one-to-one coaching, they come for these kinds of services. So I'll tell you the entities, if you would, that I love to work with the most are children, animals, and those who are at the end of life. their energy is so pure, and like all the stuff that gets in the way of us being human, all of our thinking mind goes out the window. As you all know, your, early childhood background, you want to learn anything in life, just go sit with a toddler. You'll learn everything you need to know. And the same is true with animals. And so I love doing energetic work. I have one dog right now that I'm absolutely loving. He has high anxiety. Lots of reasons why, but when I work with him, it's so fun. And I actually got to meet him in person for the first time several months ago. And his people were like, "Oh my God, usually when a new person comes in, like he completely loses his mind." I'm like, "I'm not new. We know each other."
Mhm.
And so that's been really fun. And then the end of life work is really, really important. Typically what happens, somebody comes and says, "Hey, I've got a loved one that is going through a rough time." Sometimes it's someone who is hanging on for a really long time and they're like, we try to tell them to let go. And then, I connect with him and he's like, "There's an insurance paper you need to sign. Please, will you go sign that paper?" And then, within 20 minutes of signing the paper, he's like, "Okay, now I can go." Right. Or, somebody is struggling with pain. And so to gift them the opportunity of doing that energetic work is really amazing. Some people have real problems. Like I'm talking like, okay, I'm struggling with an addiction, right? Or everything has kind of, the yogurt of life has hit the fan and I don't know what to do, and please help me sort this out. And so the angels are really helpful in helping us understand what the real root cause is, which is often something that you just don't know, but it's the simplest solution. And once you trust that and you're like, "I just need to do this," like I can't tell you how many times the most spiritual advice I've given someone is you need to drink water.
Hmm.
You just need to drink water. We have a saying in some of the groups I run that if you're going to any sort of family event, funeral, or something that's going to be stressful, take along the biggest water bottle you possibly can, because at the very least, you'll be going to the bathroom, and that's where you can do your deep breathing and your
Literally, that's what I
resetting.
was gonna say. At least it'll give you an excuse to walk away for a few minutes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So where is that? Is that spiritual advice? Is that practical advice? Yes.
Hmm. I love that you're just so openly stop trying to silo me. We spend so much time trying to fit into boxes that have been put in front of us, or expectations of people. And I have to wear this hat today, or I have to be this person for this group. And it's just sort of beautiful to to hear you say, "No, I am all of the." Your hands did the yin and the yang, and
And we all are.
yeah.
One of the things, and this is something that I haven't, so let me back up. I do have 3 courses on the website if someone is interested. So the first course is called Working with Angel Energy. So that is basically based on my experience with the first 22 angels that showed up that first day. They came and they said, "Hey, we've got some stuff to share with you." And I was like, "I bet you do. Let me get my journal." And so that course, I call it a course because that's what people know. It's really an experience. It teaches you through the organizational process that the angels showed me, regardless of whatever sort of lens of life that you are in, you'll be able to understand it. And so it shows you the connection with who you are as a human, all parts of you. So your spiritual, energetic, mental, physical, emotional, how it's all connected. And then you'll have your own struggles in life. Once you go through that, you'll see, "Oh, this is what I've been struggling with my whole life." Well, yeah, that's the thing that you're trying to learn in this lifetime. And so that's a beautiful kind of starter. There's also some amazing meditations in there. So recently on the podcast, because I had a mouth surgery again and couldn't speak, I was like, we're bringing the angels back. And so we brought in some of the angel meditations that we have in that course that we haven't done on the podcast before. So that
Mhm.
was a couple weeks ago. And then the second course was emotional management with archangels. So getting to know the archangels, but from the point of view of saying, "Hey, you're an emotional being. You have things going on in your life." And so when you're struggling with anger or you're struggling with pride can be a good thing until it's not. Which angel can you call on that can really help you? And then the third one is called Playground of the Mind. It doesn't have the word angel in it, but essentially it teaches you the 11 types of thinking Most people use a good handful of them. They know about a few others that they're like, I'm not that good at that thinking. There's 11 types. I've actually done one for early childhood to teach infant toddler teachers how to encourage these types of thinking with their young children. Essentially, I'm having the caretakers observe that children are already doing them. Shh, don't tell them I said that. But you learn the 11 types of thinking. You have the angels that are coming in pairs. So they have some pairs that are natural pairs, some that are opposite pairs. They have various things that they're trying to teach you through your thinking. So that's a very kind of logical and woo-woo process together. So that teaches you a lot about you, about angels, and about how we're partnering in this lifetime. So yeah, there's a lot in there. There's a lot that I offer. There's another piece to this that I've talked about in some realms, but not everybody understands some of this stuff. So I'm going to give it to you in like this piece.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys have ever heard that we have multiple dimensions of who we are, right? We live in a 3D world, right? Some people say we have 4D, which is, really about love, and 5D, they say is like the highest frequency. The angels have shown me we're actually 14 dimension beings. So there's a whole organizational system. I haven't done a course on this. I probably will at some point. But essentially, that is what I'm shown. I'll tell you how this spiritual gift came to be because, everything spiritual also happens in Meyer.
Applebee's and Meyer. That's where we need to be going. Okay.
There you go. You don't need to go to a church. What are you talking about? So I was shopping one day and I come around into this aisle and there's this older lady there. And all of a sudden I see this, it looks like a TV screen, like a flat screen above her head. And I was like, odd, but in the grand scheme of what happens in my life, it's not the oddest thing. I'm like, interesting. And now we're moving along. Where is the condensed soup? I'm trying to find the soup. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing things on her TV, and then I'm seeing another TV with another screen. And I was like, okay, I don't have time for this. We're just going to move along. And so I come around the corner to the produce section. There's probably 15 people in the whole section. Every single one of them had multiple TV screens above their head. And the overload of information, I had no idea what was happening. I had never seen that before. I literally put my buggy to the side and I went to my car. And I was like, what do I do with this? Because I also have a rule, anything spiritual, I have to know what it's for. You have to tell me that there's a good purpose. The filter for whether it is good is if it is about unconditional love and freedom for all people. And so at that time, I was confused. I said, this doesn't fit my rules. So I'm going to put a boundary up until you help me understand this. So for several years, I was learning from the angels that I was seeing our 14-dimensional selves basically in these TV screens. It's kind of like, do you guys remember when you were in school and you were learning about science, about the human body? And they gave you the overlay pictures, right? So you had like the film that had the digestive system and the circulatory, right? It's kind of like that. That I'll see all of those 14 screens on top of each other. And then someone is in front of me, and then a screen will come up, and I see an event, or I have a feeling, or there's a question on there. This makes me really good at coaching because I just ask the question I see on the screen. And so there's information at the different dimensions of things that are happening. We live in a cause and effect world. However, our human brain likes to figure out, here's the cause, here's the effect. There are causes happening at different dimensions of who we are as a human being that are having an effect right now. So this is why I say you can do all the right things and not get the right result, because you can also do all the dumb things and still get, how many of you have done dumb things and you're like, ooh, there's some grace and mercy there. Right? And so, yeah, there's a lot happening about who we are as individuals. And there's more to this that I'm not going to go into. Like, we are huge as an individual. And so, Cheryl, you said talking about boxes, like, you not only are trying to fit into boxes that your early caregivers gave you, because that was their definition of safety in the world, safety and success. But you've also adopted boxes over time, right? What is it like to be a mom? I have 3 kids and they're getting to be adults now. What is it like to be a mom? I'm still questioning that. I stopped actually trying to define it. And now I'm saying, what is it like to be Josiah's mom as he turns 22?
Mm-hmm.
What is it like to be Hannah's mom as she turns 20? What is it like to be Ellie's mom as she turns 17?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is a different box that continues to open up. It's kind of like a lotus flower. I do a very logical thing, and every 6 months I ask each one of my kids, what am I doing that you would like me to stop doing? What am I not doing that you would like me to continue doing? And whatever their answers, that's the definition of what it's like to be the best mom for them right now. So instead of defining it based on what the world gave me, I'm like, well, I mean, you can tell me what to do all you want. You'd think I'm a good mom or a bad mom, but I'm going on this definition. And maybe that's where it's hard to pin me down, because I often say, well, you're not the boss of me. And it's not because I'm rebellious in any way, but there's a higher order here, that is being, it's leading me. And it's always about the best and highest for all involved. And so you might want me to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm telling you, that's a great idea, but we're going over here. And someone else can't understand because they didn't just have this conversation with an angel. Sometimes that's hard to explain.
So I wonder a little bit then, what you had just mentioned, that not everybody just had a conversation with an angel. So what is something that you wish more people were open to? You had mentioned that, angels are in our everyday lives, for all of us. And it's kind of goes along with our own intuition. There's multiple pieces. So in your conversations, what do you think angels wish? And then also, what would you wish that people were more open or in tune to?
I think as you were talking about that, there's 3 statements that I say all the time to myself and also to others. I am safe, I am loved, all is well. We are highly creative and intelligent beings, and we use those gifts against ourselves like none other. We can be late 5 minutes to work, and somehow created the story that we're going to be homeless under the bridge next week. Like we can do that to ourselves, right? And so this idea that I am safe, like right now in this moment, is there anything in your current environment that is unsafe? For the grand majority of our time, that is true, that we are safe. But we convince ourselves we aren't, largely because of those boxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I am loved. That's the one constant thing that always comes out of anything spiritual: unconditional love and freedom. You are loved more than you think you are. I am encouraging people that follow me to use your words more. Tell people that you love them. Tell them something that you appreciate. It's not just to be kind, it's literally life giving to them. Also, the angel of creative words. She's one of my favorites. She doesn't really have a body. She's more of an essence. She's kind of this like pastel, see-through-ish energy. She has less of a body and more of like a sound. She's like this angelic whooshing sound, but her sole job is to magnify your words, whatever your words are. So if you are saying, hey, I so appreciate, like to my grandma, I love your cookies. The angel of creative word magnifies those words and kind of gives it power. And it's not just about your grandma. It continues on out into the universe. Now, this is also really cool. There was a time when I was really struggling. I was going through a terrible divorce, trying to escape the house that I was in. I was in an abusive relationship. I had gone through something that essentially had put me, I don't know, I had never been in this state, never been there before, but I was laying on my bed and I couldn't speak for almost 2 hours. I remember my kids would come in and just make sure that I was still alive, but I was trapped in my body. I couldn't get out. And I didn't know what to do. That was the most unsafe I've ever felt in my life. And I heard the angel of creative word. She didn't even say anything. And it was like from up in the depths of my recesses came this little teeny tiny whisper, help. And she showed me how she took that little help and she magnified it. And within half an hour, somehow I was at a friend's house and they were making me tea and we were having a lovely conversation. And she showed me the behind the scenes of how that one little tiny word made love show up in a very practical way. And
Mm.
from there, it's like I'm getting tears as I'm thinking about it because this is what I would like people to know. You are never alone. You are safer than you think you are. You are loved so much more than you know. People are here for you, but even if people aren't, angels are. They're always here for you. They're always with you. And you don't have just one. You have a whole bunch of them that are around you all the time. And when you work in partnership with them, you have power. But this power, and this is why I love that Divine Feminine Energy course, because it teaches you the power in vulnerability. Like, think about what I'm doing here. I'm a professional. I have professional works out there. I mean, some people would say it's a death blow to my logical work if I show up and I talk about angels. I know different because I see the higher perspective. I don't think it's a weakness or a vulnerability in any way. Some people might. I see it as when I tell the truth of my experience, even that weak point where I'm catatonic for 2 hours, like people will be like, "What's wrong with you, Michelle?" I know, but did you catch that? That my whisper of help was so powerful. It brought in the exact help that I needed. And I'm here today because of that one whisper. And so I wish people would understand that they have love, they have support, especially when it doesn't look like it to our human brain.
You've mentioned a few times within that the term freedom. Can you expand on that a little bit just for our listeners so they understand as they're hearing?
Yeah. So Viktor Frankl once said, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. I love him. He's kind of for those of you who are theorists in education, because, why not? Let's geek out a little bit. You have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where Maslow said, hey, you need to have all your physical needs met before you can be a good person, basically, a good, kind person. Which on his deathbed, he actually said, no, that was ridiculous. I change everything. But everybody forgets that. That's okay. So we interpret that as like, okay, we've got to have all of our needs met. But Viktor Frankl wrote his philosophy within the concentration camps during World War II. And he said, actually, if you look around at all of these people who have no needs met whatsoever, they're being kind individuals, they're caring, they're compassionate, they're helping their fellow man. They are, by Maslow, the highest of the pyramid. And so you kind of flip that around. So I love the two of these guys. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying we need to put it all together. So Viktor Frankl said, if we elect or we build the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast of the United States, we need to build the Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. So we have liberty and we have responsibility, we have freedom and we have accountability, right? I think here in the United States, we're coming up on July 4th. We're talking about freedom. We just had Juneteenth, lots of conversations around freedom. What is freedom? Yes, we want everyone to have all that they need. That is our goal. And in the process of doing that, can we teach people that you have freedom right now, even though your circumstances might not look like you have freedom? There is always a choice. There are so many choices. As someone is growing in their awareness level, they start kind of in this victim mentality. I lived there many years. I think all of us have. So I have every now and then I go there, usually when I'm driving. It's a sore spot. I'm working on it. But when you're in that victim mentality, nothing happens because of you. It only happens to you. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're kind of choosing this scenario. And then the next day you play, who's the problem with me today, right? You're going to cause my problem today. All right, Felicia at work, you're it, right? And like everything in your brain goes to confirm that other people are trying to go out to get you. You don't see that you have freedom. And then as you grow through that, you see, okay, there's usually a good choice and a bad choice. Okay, if I can see those two choices, I can choose a good choice. That's awesome. That's growth. Then you get to this point where you realize there's a lot of good choices. I might have 8 good choices and 2 bad choices. Oh my goodness, now what? And now there's a paralysis, right? So now I have too much freedom. You're going to Baskin Robbins. What do I do with these 31 flavors? I have no idea. That's why I always only order Rocky Road. So then you move along and eventually you get to the point where you realize everything is a great choice. You can literally choose anything and it's going to turn out well for you. That's freedom. It takes a long ways to get there. It takes a lot of experience and also intention. I don't know what caused me to ask the universe for wisdom when I was the ripe old age of 20. I remember asking for that. That was dumb because life gives you a lot of experience to gain wisdom from. I should have asked for patience. It would have been easier. But freedom, I believe, is taking in, like I said earlier, this is what we're doing now. Okay, even within that, there are many things that come in my realm. This is not my fault. This is not my problem. It's not my circus nor my monkeys, but the monkeys are here. So now what, right? And I have freedom even in that.
You're probably glad you didn't ask for patience, because you know what they say about that. Then you get all the trials that help, force
Yes.
you to build that patience.
Well, wisdom wasn't real great to ask for either because you get patience and then other things.
You were just probably trying to copy Solomon or something.
I don't know. I don't know. I was dumb. So now I know.
Michelle, as we probably start to think about wrapping up this conversation, obviously this topic is so much bigger
Yeah.
than what we can cover today. So I appreciate even, just knowing that you have these podcasts with meditations that people can find. And again, I quickly found them this morning by clicking on your Grow by One website and then finding the button for your podcast. But I'm wondering, sort of as a wrap up to introduction, let's call it 101,
Yeah.
Angels 101, and all the things that that we think about that were supposed to be easy and we found differently. Is there a message or something you would want our listeners to hear before we're done?
I think the most common message, so when I'm doing an intuitive reading of any kind, the thing that is probably 80% this message comes out, you can't do this wrong. You can't do anything wrong, right? And I'm not talking just like I love to think in paradox and, play with that. People say I talk too much like Yoda sometimes. I love it. It's great. But you really can't do this life wrong. We're all learning so many different things. When we decide and define that box for us and say, this is who I'm going to be, this is what that's going to look like, and then we fail, so what?
Mhm.
Like, really, so what? That's probably the question I ask myself the most. So what? What do you want to do with that, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you can have a beautiful experience with an angel, and at the end, the question is going to be, so what? What are you going to do because of that? You can have an awesome session with a coach where you're like, oh, that's awesome. But if you don't get to a so what and an action step, it was a wasted trip. I have a client that's addicted to meditation. I tell him this all the time. He spends like 3 hours of meditation. I'm like, that's awesome. When are you going to be a human? Like at some point, you got to come to the end and say, that was great that I had that. But how is that affecting the rest of the 21 hours of your life? The same is true. You go into an executive leadership team meeting and you come out and you don't have an action step. That was a wasted trip, right?
Mhm.
There's a so what for everything. And so you can't do this wrong unless you're just asleep. If you're asleep all the time, and so how do you stay awake? Honestly, okay, here you go. You got to drink your water. You're human. You are made up of what, 76% water? Drink your water, please. You got to go outside. There are so many different reasons to go outside, but there is so much spiritually happening outside. Find a favorite tree. I'm serious. Go to the same place in nature almost every day if you can.
Mhm.
I've got a beautiful state park here. I'm having this love relationship with a female blue heron.
Mhm.
She finds me no matter where I'm at in the park. I'm absolutely loving it. But there's a sense of awe and wonder that you can't get inside a building. You have to go outside. Wish on a star, do whatever, right? Talk to a baby, talk to an animal. Like the people who are the closest to God at the beginning and the end of life, they have so much wisdom. Slow down. If you're in a public place, I want you, this is the beautiful gift that I found after I had a stroke almost 18 years ago. I lived in the slow lane for a long time because I couldn't move my body. I was in a walker, so I'd like go to church, go to the mall, whatever. And there is a slow lane. They're on the outside. And most people, you're living life and you don't notice it. Go out, slow down, get to the side, pay attention to who's living in the slow lane of life. Those are the people you want to connect with. They're the ones that often have the most wisdom. No, not all the time, but we do these things to achieve in life. And I love achieving. I absolutely do. But half the time I just laugh when I achieve something. When somebody wants to give me an award or I get another degree, I just laugh. Not that it wasn't important, but in the grand scheme of what I'm seeing, it's one thing. But so is holding a baby. And so is playing with your dog. And so is, right? So you're loved. You can't do this wrong. Go outside, drink your water, and then just repeat. Everything else is extra.
Thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep the conversation going, because life may not be easy, but listening in should be.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.